Welcome to Sprinkle with Hope podcast with your host, Jason. And we have an amazing guest with us today, Kara Goldin. She is the founder and CEO of Hint Water, and she is amazing. She wrote a book. If you guys can see this, Undaunted, Overcoming Doubts and Doubters. So, Kara, if you wouldn't mind kind of introducing yourself and then just talk just a little bit about what that actually means, overcoming doubts and doubters.
Well, thank you so much. So I'm the founder and CEO, probably best known for this. It's a water called Hint, which is an unsweetened flavored water. And I actually had an idea just over 16 years ago that I really was kind of thinking about for my own health initially. So I had no beverage experience, no food experience. I had been a tech executive and sort of known for being a tech executive. I was, prior to founding Hint, I had grown the e-commerce and shopping partnerships for America Online and did that for 7 years. It was $1 billion in revenue to AOL. And I actually had gone through an acquisition. I came in through my first startup and my first job in Silicon Valley, at least, for a little spin out of Apple that was a little known Steve Jobs idea called To Market, that we were doing CD-ROM shopping. And for those of you who are old enough to remember the 90s and sort of when we had dial-up services, and you got in a fight with your brother when it was when he got on when you were trying to chat, it
So
was
true.
like, right? It's so true. So those were the years, the good old times. And so that was a company that had a, really, really forward thinking. And again, Steve had thought, if I can just throw the graphics on a disk and just tell consumers, stick the disk in the computer, they don't really need to know what's on the disk. They just need to know it's an update, right? And that was the world that I was living in. We were acquired, went to AOL. And actually prior to that, I was in media in New York, had worked for Time Magazine, and then also at a late stage startup that we didn't even call it that back then, but for CNN. And still had Ted Turner running around the office. I learned a ton about culture. Didn't know I was learning about it then, but going from a very buttoned up environment, very blue blood environment at Time, to someplace like CNN, where Ted is wearing cowboy boots and a suit. I grew up in Arizona. I never saw anybody wear cowboy boots and a suit before in my life until I saw Ted Turner wearing that. So that was pretty cool. And but anyway, had great experience. I was the youngest vice president at America Online, one of the first VPs who was a woman at America Online, and it was an exciting time. I went through something called a hockey stick while I was there. That for those of you who don't know, I mean, that's, super huge growth. And it was great. It was the time when nobody really thought e-commerce or shopping was going to happen. And then all of a sudden it did. And I'm running this group, have a group of 200 people that are working for me remotely all over the country. I was getting up from my bedroom in San Francisco and rolling into my office, practically in my pajamas to kind of run a lot of this. Good, really, really good times. But somewhere along the way, I had 3 kids. And in 2000, 2001-ish timeframe, I just decided that I really wanted to spend time with my family. And they were all living in San Francisco. I was getting to know all the United Airlines personnel on my flights. And I just thought, I just don't want to be here. I really want to go home and like go to mommy and me classes and, see my husband and just spend more time here versus on a plane and on the East Coast where America Online was based. And so that's when I kind of got off the train, and it wasn't a popular idea. It was, everybody said, you've done really well. You're young. You definitely know what you're doing. You can do a lot of different things. Even in Silicon Valley, I was getting recruited, and it was just, I just didn't know what I wanted to do. And I mention this because a lot of people ask me, did you always know that you wanted to be an entrepreneur? And I never really thought about it. I worked for amazing people and saw a
Mhm.
lot of different, types of management and types of kind of ways to, kind of just hit go, and a lot of just going out and trying. I mean, even Ted Turner, like not really even realizing whether or not he could build a network, which was like a giant thing. I mean,
Yeah.
nobody was doing what he was doing, in the early 90s until he did it, right? And
Yeah.
there were, it was basically you got the news at 6 and 10, and it was ABC, NBC, and CBS. And so it was just I had been around enough entrepreneurs, but never actually sat and thought about it. But when I was taking a couple of years off, and I guess was really trying to figure out what the heck am I putting in my kids' bodies, that was probably definitely a component of how I really started
Mhm.
to focus on this stuff. But also, I had progressively gained weight over the course of all of my pregnancies. I had developed terrible adult acne that I had seen a bunch of dermatologists for, trying to figure out what the heck. I didn't even have this as a teenager. Why is this happening to me now? And then also my energy levels had significantly decreased, and kept thinking, I don't really even have a reason. Like, I don't work, why am I so tired all the time? And like, what is going on? I was just really off. So that's when I decided to diet for the first time in my life, and kind of fix all of this before going out and getting a, real job again. And I not only saw this confusion that existed, but
Mhm.
also this world of kind of healthy perception versus healthy reality in front of me on the shelf. Should I have low fat? Should I be counting calories? There were all these different messaging coming at me, and, frankly, a lot of money behind these things as well. I still didn't get it. And I basically just sort of succumbed to the idea that this was the way I was supposed to be. And, it was just, that's life. And that was the point when I happened to look down at my diet soda. I'd been counting calories in my food,
Mhm.
but I happened to look down at my diet soda and saw all these ingredients. I was like, wow, if that was food, then I would cancel it, right? I wouldn't be
Yeah.
having it anymore. But it wasn't. And nobody was talking about drinks. Everybody's talking about food and exercise, but nobody was really talking about the drinks. So I thought, I'm just going to try it for a couple of weeks and see what happens. Like, at best, maybe I lose a couple pounds, and let's just see what happens. And I'll swap it out for water, because I was really thirsty and I'd never been a water drinker. So after a couple of days of this, and still doing exactly the same thing that I was doing with my food, which frankly was pretty healthy already, that's when I started slicing up fruit and throwing it into the water. I remember the first time I did it, I think I sliced up fruit and looked around to make sure no one was looking. Like, I thought I was kind of cheating, because I didn't know if there were any calories in it. And I tried even putting a tiny bit of juice in the water, but it was kind of like watered down juice, versus
Yeah.
actually the fruit was way better.
Mhm.
And so then 2.5 weeks later, after doing this, two things happened. Number one, I was always running to the store to grab fruit and slice it up. And it was, not very cost effective, but also kind of inconvenient and a hassle to do that. And then I felt like I really lost weight. I was just, frankly, like, didn't even have a scale in my house anymore, because I didn't want to know
Yeah.
what the situation was. So I hop on the scale, and in 2.5 weeks, I had lost over 24 pounds. And
Wow.
that's when, yeah, I mean, it was crazy. And my skin cleared up. I had so much more energy. And I remember like telling my husband, he's like, wait, what? Like, this is crazy. And he's like, what have you been doing? Like, I've been having dinner with you. You're not, you're not like not eating. I mean, and I said, the only thing I did was switch out my diet soda, Diet Coke, that I had been drinking, frankly, since I was in high school, and not even thinking I was doing the wrong thing. I thought diet soda was healthy, and basically sugary soda was really bad. And so when I had this, like, epiphany, over this trial that I had done, that's when I just said, I'm not going back to Diet Coke anymore. I mean, that's like, or Diet Pepsi or any of them. Like, I'm done with the diet soda chapter. And I tried to solve the problem around the convenience factor of like cutting up fruit. And I went to the store and I looked for a water with just fruit in it. And I thought, am I shopping at the wrong store? I went everywhere. I mean, I went to vitamin stores, health, like health stores. I went to
Yeah.
like conventional stores. I went to the Costco's of the world, Whole Foods, nobody had it. And instead, they were pointing to this other kind of healthy perception product, vitamin water, which, was in its heyday 16 years ago. And I remember educating the guy who was stocking the shelves at Whole Foods about vitamin water, how at that point, they didn't even have a diet version. It was just full-fledged sugar. And I realized and educated him that vitamin water had more calories in it than a can of Coke.
Hmm.
And I thought, like, just curious, why do you think it's healthier? And he said, because it's vitamin and water. And that's really when I guess my curiosity, I was always super curious, and clearly being in kind of a build environment with all of these other startups that I had worked in, I just every day I was waking up and I was just super curious. Okay, I'm going to go to another store and I'm going to find out what somebody else thinks about vitamin water and diet soda. Am I the only one that thinks about this stuff? And I just thought, wow, if I could just actually create a product that doesn't have sweeteners in it and has fruit in it, I could help people to get healthier. And that was it. And I didn't
Yeah.
even call myself an entrepreneur. I mean, this was kind of this, we didn't even have this term like side hustle, but this for me was just sort of absorbing time that I had while I was trying to figure out for that real job. And I went into, this back to my store, my Whole Foods, and I said, hey, how do I get a product on the shelf? And I don't know about you. I asked this question to a lot of people. There's like, no, I never did that. Like, I never was curious about what the process was. And I said, I don't know why I was. I just thought it'd be really cool, like just to tell my friends, yeah, I launched a product at Whole Foods, and, and it failed. Like nobody wanted it. And I put it in my pantry and
Yeah.
that was the end of it. But that's not what happened. And people, I instead just said, I'm going to just keep doing this and see what happens. And again, going back to kind of the curiosity side of it, that I think was really what drove me. And so many people over the years have said to me, you must be a risk taker. How are you so fearless? And, I've thought about a lot about that. Am I fearless? I don't know. I definitely am scared to do things. And there's been points along the way, that I think about it a lot. And I would share these stories over the years, primarily with entrepreneurs who were trying to do something kind of hard. I think, my EQ, right, when I'm out speaking, and it's always the Q&A at the end, and you see the person who's got these walls up in front of them that, ask the question like, how did you like quit your job? And I'm like, to go and do this company. I'm like, I didn't really quit. It was just for me. I mean, I did quit, but I wanted to do it for a different reason. And then I was ready to get moving again.
Hmm.
And I felt like through all these stories, I would help people to figure out their own path
Hmm.
and that they can think for themselves. I'm not going to solve their problem, intentionally. Instead, hear my story, hear how I got a product on the shelf, hear how I raised money, here's how I, you know, overcame my fears. And finally, and then I'll be quiet. Finally, the other thing that I kept hearing over the years about entrepreneurs is that they're not only fearless risk takers, but there's the unicorns and then there's the failures. And I've always felt like the most interesting stuff that I've wanted to talk to entrepreneurs about comes in between, right? Like
Hmm.
what happened and how did you run out of money? Did you, did your product get pulled by the FDA? Did you take the company public and that was the stupidest thing that you ever did, right? Like all these different things. Did you have the wrong people? Right. There were all these different things. Did you hit a pandemic? Right. And your category, just all of these things that really need to be told in order for people just to get smarter about, thinking about their business, but also helping them to recognize that it's not easy, right? You may, for a photo shoot, have a really nice suit on and, whatever, nice fancy clothes. I don't know, maybe in Silicon Valley, that's, a $300 t-shirt and nice pair of blue jeans or whatever it is. But there's so much more that goes into it that I think people need to know about. And while I call myself an accidental entrepreneur, I call myself an accidental author because I didn't plan on writing a book. I really, again, just really wanted to help people. And I'm hearing from so many people that not only has Hint helped them, but also Undaunted has really helped people to kind of, move forward and know that it is possible to get something done.
That's awesome. That's such a great story. So here you have this great company that's taking off and you decide to write a book. Tell us a little bit about the book. I know what it is. I haven't actually read it, but just for our listeners. So you talk a lot about facing fear and doubt and those type of things, and also deciding to move forward. So what are some tips on how we can do that? Or
well, I think that the first thing is that the more I hate to always even term them as failures, but sometimes they are failures, right? But the more challenges you have, the more likely that you've built up enough resilience to get through tough times, right? So it's sort of like this, it's on the same level as you give the busiest people the project and it'll get done. You don't really know how it got done, right? But they just go and figure it out on how to do it. It's the same thing for people that have seen a lot and had a lot of challenges. And that does not, sometimes it could be based on age and experience, but actually more often than not, it's the people that are hungry, right? And the people that are curious and the people who are resilient. And, it's funny. I mean, over the years, people have asked me, how have you gotten, an amazing cap table of investors over the years? If you were to talk to any of my investors, I think, first of all, they like the product, they like Hint, but I think that they also are really banking on me because, they're like, she is like sits there and, figures it out, right? She is just going to she's the power horse that is going to sit there and go and figure out how to do this and not allow, life or challenges to get me daunted, right? And instead figure out a few steps to move forward. So I think, the short answer is that we all are afraid to fail. We're all afraid in general of something. And even the most successful people are. But the key thing for you is to figure out, how do you move forward and how do you not stay complacent? Because I think complacency is really what kills you. It kills companies, right? If you do not innovate and figure out how to take a couple steps forward. And then finally, I would say celebrating those, little wins and, setting yourself up for failure by having a to-do list of like 15 things that you have to get done. You'll never get 15 things done in a day. And then you think, I suck, right? Because I've, haven't accomplished what I really wanted to accomplish. Instead, set yourself up for 2 things and then say, if I get those done, then I'll move on to some other things. Have a reach goal, but also have a reasonable, plan to actually go and get something done that makes you frankly feel good about yourself so that you can get up the next day and say, okay, now I got to go knock this out too. And I think that that's what's really the most important thing.
Yeah, I love that. And you know, I haven't finished your book completely, but reading part of it, you had gone and talked to, I think was it the CEO of Coca-Cola, and he kind of dismissed you, right? And he was a doubter. He was doubting you and all that you had to do. And I think that, in reading your book, that was an interesting part of this whole concept of you bringing hint to the world.
Yeah, it's interesting. I I started getting the product on the shelf and was making progress. I also had 4 kids under the age of 6. I was not the profile. There was plenty of reasons to doubt me, right?
Yeah.
Here I am, no experience in the beverage industry. I'm like, you know, juggling, delivering cases to stores with childcare so that I can go and get this done. I had my Jeep Grand Cherokee. I knew how many cases I could fit in my Jeep so that before it bottomed out in the hills of San Francisco. I mean, like there was just crazy stuff that I was learning about that I just was so focused on making sure that this would happen. But after a year of this, and my husband was helping me, I had sort of enlisted him. As I say, he says, I just joined only because I didn't want you to like file bankruptcy, or us having to file bankruptcy because you were on this like mission and this path. And that's when, like, after a year, I thought, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't do this anymore. Right. We all have our doubts. I kept thinking, I mean, is this the smartest thing for me to do? I'm getting some other opportunities out there. And a friend was talking to me about this and knew this executive at Coca-Cola and said, you've told me you don't know how you're going to get outside of California because you can't drive your Grand Cherokee and across, to Utah and go deliver product, right? You've got to find distributors, and you don't exactly know how to do that stuff because even if I had an email or a phone number, we were too tiny and we were unknown. The first question people would ask me is, oh, did you used to work at Coke or Pepsi? And why should we bank on you or believe in you? And
Yeah.
I didn't have a good story, right? Because again, people size you up really quickly. And are you a waste of their time, right? In any industry.
Sure.
And anyway, so that, and then also our shelf life. I was trying to figure out shelf life issues. I had specs for a product that, were really pretty easy, but I thought pretty specific: no sweeteners, no preservatives. But every one of the bottling plants that we were going to was saying, there's no way that we're going to bottle a product here because we don't want to get sued by, the product going bad and somebody dying. I mean, I didn't want that either, but we kept thinking there has to be a way to do this. And again, I was really giving up. It was way too hard. And that's when a friend introduced me to this gentleman. When he agreed to meet with me, we had a phone call, and about 15 minutes into the phone call, I'm selling him on how great my company is and how, Whole Foods is reordering and it's awesome and everything's great. And he interrupted me and said, "Sweetie, Americans love sweet. This product isn't going anywhere." And I thought, wait, did he just call me sweetie? I've never been called sweetie in my life. And I mean, this was kind of the nail in the coffin.
Yeah.
Probably. Like, I had a moment in that 1 hour phone call where I thought, am I still like here? Am I dealing with this, industry? I'm dealing with this jerk on the phone. And people ask me, like, why didn't you say, excuse me? What did you say? Why didn't you hang up on him? I don't know. I have no idea. I just sat there and stunned. And then I continued I just decided I'm going to listen to him. And through the next 45 minutes, that's when he started telling me essentially their strategy and what they believed that the consumer really wanted in a product. And what they believed was that the consumer wanted 0 calories. They had been at 10 calories at that point. And nowhere in the next 45 minutes of this conversation did I hear him say that the consumers really want health. And that was my whole purpose. And so when I hung up the phone with him after an hour, and it was, pleasant enough after that moment of shock that I had, I really think that he thought that I was going to, quit that I had just decided to throw the towel in, and he wasn't going to help me. And instead I thought, wow, they're not focused on health at all. They have a very, very different mission. Maybe it's not even a mission like what I'm doing. I'm really focused on how do I help this consumer get healthier. I had seen it for myself, how, diet soda, I'd been drinking it for years thinking that it was going to help me get healthier, and it wasn't. And so essentially I was hearing, exactly what I had said, healthy perception versus healthy reality, and tricking the, consumer. He never used that word, but that's what I was kind of hearing. And so I immediately thought, why should I listen to his opinion when we're on like two different rivers? Instead, I thought I shouldn't continue to have a dialogue with him because he has a lot more money than me. And if I convince him that health is like really where it's at, then he'll turn his cruise ship around really quick and come, crush me. Right. And that's really what I thought. And so I, I, I think it's an important story for so many entrepreneurs, primarily because it's one of, you're always going to have doubters. You're going to have the people with lots of industry experience who are going to doubt you. And, you're like an easy target because you think that they're godlike, right? They not only have lots of experience, but lots of money.
Mm-hmm.
And then you've got your family and friends too, who are, not a big help because they're the ones that they never want you to take risk, right? You're an executive, you've, done great, everything. Like, why are you doing what you're doing? You've got 4 kids at home. Why is this important to you? And, they still love you, but they're definitely doubting and questioning every step that you're making along the way. And it's hard. It's lonely at times, but I think that the key thing for me that I saw was that if you've got a vision and you've got a purpose, I mean, mission and purpose driven, that term wasn't even out there 16 years ago, that, you've really got to continue moving that forward and figuring out. I think that the thing that really saved me was that we had been in business for a little over a year, and almost from day one, we were hearing from consumers who called in on our 1-800 number or, emailed in. Don't tell any of them, but it was me that they were calling, right? Like I was the customer service person.
Yeah.
And they would talk to me about, that Hint was helping them drink more water. It was the first time that I ever heard about this disease called type 2 diabetes. And, and I just was so interested in what this consumer was saying. But in addition, they kept saying the word help over and over and over again. They didn't, all get together and say, let's call Kara or Hint and say, let's tell her that that her product is helping. They just used it as a descriptor as to why they wanted this product. And so whenever you've got that relationship with the consumer, and I encourage everybody to have a direct relationship with the consumer, especially in today's day and age, when you have these doubters out there, it's almost like, you with the consumer can gang up on them, right? And in your brain, kind of thinking, well, I don't know, like I know all of you and you have a lot of experience and whatever, but I have a lot of people who are paying money for this product. It wasn't millions of people, but it was a small enough audience that didn't know me. They weren't doing me a favor buying the drink. They were doing it because they liked it.
Yeah.
And they thought it was helpful. And I just thought it's so interesting, and how they're spilling, their life out to me about their health. I mean, I just thought it was fascinating. And so they were the energy and the drive that kept me going. And we're all going to have these doubters out there. And the key is to try to get started. And I think figuring out, how do I find that customer? How do I find these other people that want my product? If you don't have that, then the doubters, they gang up on you. But I think that if you have the consumers who are saying, I kind of like it. And again, this is not just for food and beverage. I mean, Mark Zuckerberg's building Facebook, it was the same thing. It was, Sarah Blakely at Spanx, Steve Jobs at Apple, right? That is really what saves you.
It's awesome. I love and appreciate the fact that you had a focus and a drive and determination to get this thing, and you didn't listen to the doubters, that you just pushed through that. And you've added not just water, but I saw you have now sunscreen, and I saw hand sanitizer. And what is there anything else that you're excited for in the near future that you're working on, or anything in your life that you're looking forward to in the near future?
I think more than anything, we launched hand sanitizer during the last year, the last crazy year,
Yeah.
primarily because we felt like we were solving a problem that I saw so clearly. Everything smelled like tequila,
Yeah.
and probably
Yeah.
was in some cases. And I just thought, what is wrong with this industry? I mean, it's just, I kept thinking some of it really smelled rancid too, and it was, and, was pulled by the FDA at certain points. So, we do products that help people stay healthy. And I think, everything has a purpose and a mission. I'm always trying to get people to launch things that I think are needed in the market. I'm actually in that way kind of a terrible entrepreneur, because I give people away, I give away ideas all the time. And, even deodorant, I wanted a deodorant that didn't have aluminum in it. I became, very educated on, my father had Alzheimer's 10 years ago, and I became very educated and interested in Alzheimer's and sort of brain disease. And aluminum is something that, we on a, daily basis, the average consumer comes in contact with a ton of aluminum. They drink out of cans, they use foil, all of these things. Maybe it's okay every once in a while, but there's a lot of doctors that say that it's not so great for dementia and Alzheimer's and just overall brain health. We don't have a cure for Alzheimer's, right? Like, nobody really knows for sure, but I just thought, I don't want to keep using antiperspirant, which is aluminum. I mean, that's the difference between deodorant and antiperspirant. And because it's, blocking, all kinds of ducts as well, and all kinds of, things that people just don't really think about. But more than anything, I wanted to try and use deodorant, but everything had a coconut base. And I'm allergic to coconut. A lot of people actually have sensitivities to coconut. It's a class 1 allergen, like peanuts. So it's maybe not as big of an allergy, but it's an important allergy that you can, basically have throat closure in a matter of minutes if you come in contact with it. Oftentimes it starts out as like a rash. So a lot of people who are interested in having like natural deodorants, they'll try a natural deodorant and they'll say, oh, it didn't work and it gave me a rash. It's probably the coconut. And so anyway, I've talked to so many entrepreneurs and said, gosh, maybe you guys should go do this, right? You're in the personal care space, and nobody would do it. So I was like, I know how, I'm just going to go figure out how to go do this. And again, like, that for me is, I never thought people say, oh, did you always have a plan to go into all these different categories? No, not really. I mean, I wish everybody else would have done it. Sunscreen, I wish people would have come out with a sunscreen with no oxybenzone in it before us. And, they didn't. And so that was the thing. I'm like, well, if they're not going to do it, I'm going to just go do it. And it ends up, not only servicing our customer who really is interested in ingredients and wanting to stay healthy, but I think it actually, sometimes people might not be where other people are in terms of what they're putting into their body. Maybe they're still drinking, diet soda, and they just aren't paying attention because they're healthy, right? They're, they don't have weight issues. They don't diet, right? They just think, oh, my diet soda is just fine. Suddenly they find our sunscreen because they're really interested in, cosmetics and ingredients. And it's amazing to me how many people enter through other places. And then once they find it and they build trust with the brand, that's when they'll go try the rest of what the brand has. And I think, me as a founder, and people who know me really well know that we don't have a product. Any of our products are bad, right? I would never launch. I mean, it goes through a lot of cycles, before, not just like, lab testing, but I mean, I give it away to so many friends, and my kids, my Gen Z, my 4 Gen Zers, I mean, are so critical. I mean, it's just like they're constantly, that sucks, this is bad, so I mean, you just get a couple of those and you're like, yeah, I don't know. They're my doubters at home, but they're important ones, right? That
Right.
are,
Right.
telling you whether or not this is like worth actually putting your brand name on it.
Kara, this has been a really fascinating conversation. You brought some things that I didn't even think about. So thank you for that.
Absolutely.
So in closing, Shane and we do what's called the double down dose. And so we ask 2 questions, one from each of us. And so the first question that I have is, what is your definition of heart or having heart?
I think actually, loving who you're with and what you're doing every single day. And I think so often if you have that, then you expend that, right? As
Mhm.
well. And, having gratitude, having, caring for people. I think that it really starts with yourself, and I don't think you can expend if you're not feeling it. What you're doing every single day is what you want to be doing either.
Yeah, I echo what Jason said. I've really enjoyed this discussion. I think it's applicable to he and I and what we're going through. So I appreciate what you've said.
Yes,
The
absolutely.
second part of Double Down Dose is, how would you define hope?
How would I define hope? I think for me, hope is really generated by mission, right? And uh it's something that is kind of a it's a goal, right? But it has
Mhm.
to start somewhere, that you can hope for, um you know, you name it. There's lots of different problems in the world, but unless you're actually figuring out those steps to actually contribute to change, then, oftentimes hope can't happen, right?
Mhm.
So I think that having, I feel like hope so often does not, and it should go on with responsibility. And if you care about something enough, that you want it to happen, then you should make it happen.
That's awesome. I love it. This has been such a wonderful discussion, Kara. I want to thank you for taking the time out of your day to be with us and share
Yeah.
these just super cool ideas. And I hope for your continued success with Hint and everything that you have going on. That's so awesome. All the stuff you've got. That's amazing.
Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Yeah, Kara, thank you so much. Best wishes to you and your company and your family. So thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Thank you.